ourselves in the service of the Lord. And that's true here, where we're the best version of ourselves, albeit in a temporary false self, or whether I'm the best version of that self in the service of Krishna. And that's going to look a little different for each of us. One person is like, oh, I got vairagya in my work. I am happy. And for someone else, it's like, whoa, I have yasha in my work. I'm happy. And if they traded, they wouldn't be happy at all. All right, so your other question is, how do I now find myself and join the ranks of the confused? You know, in an ideal society, by the time we're 15, we know we're working towards that. And we basically have that side of our life settled by the time we're 18 or 20. And we can put the bulk of our energy of life into developing ourselves spiritually. Whereas nowadays, you know, I meet people in their 30s, 40s, 50s who don't know who they are. Then you said that you, as I'm going to try to get each of these, you said you resonate with all of them. I'd give a little time. This was an overview. So if you still feel that way after Thursday night, we can meet. Okay? A few things I can say right now is all of us care about all of these. Everyone wants a world that works and is pretty. I hope so. Maybe some people don't. I suppose some vandals don't feel that. But generally people want a world that works and is beautiful. And we all want a world with sustainable, regenerative wealth. And a world where there's law and order, and there's justice. And we all want a world where there's truth and wisdom. And so we all have some interest in all of these things. But what am I willing to sacrifice for that I don't want to outsource? There's a lot of things that I have some interest in and I want to see happen, but I'm equally happy if someone else actually does it. Like, I want justice in the world, but I don't want to fight for 8 or 10 hours a day. I'm very happy if someone else does that. I mean, if I have to do it, I can do it, and I can do it fairly well on some levels. But I don't like doing it. And even if I somewhat like doing it, I'm perfectly happy to let someone else do it. But the kind of work that really enriches me, I wouldn't want someone else to do. If you said to me, well, Urmila, we'll get someone else to do all the research for your classes, and then we'll just give you a script and you just deliver, I go, no. I don't know. Do you follow? Yeah. Some stuff I'm happy to outsource, but other things I'm not. What is it that's really, what are the values that are driving me? I mean, whether or not you're a resource, it would be whether or not you're driven by the concept of sustainable regenerative wealth, whether that's driving you. I'm willing to dedicate myself. And I'll give this example another time, so you'll hear this again. But like our youngest son, who's in the field of resources, he said to me, you know, Mata, he and his wife have 3 kids, he said, you know you raise successful children when they generate more wealth for society than you invested in raising them. I don't code life that way. Because that's not my driver. So it's not like just what I'm interested in, and it certainly isn't just what I'm good at, because now we're repeating this, but work is about 3 things. Being expert in the information, there's knowledge you have to do certain types of work. Being expert in the skills, and having the right Dharma. Now, we can become expert in the knowledge and skills of something that's not our Dharma. Otherwise, why would Krishna say, don't do someone else's work, even if you can do it expertly? Expertly how? Expertly in the knowledge and the skills. But if it's not matching our values, we're actually going to be messing it up. It may be at a subtle level, but we're actually going to mess. When we're messing ourselves up, that affects others. Yeah? If I'm frustrated and irritated, aren't other people going to be affected by that if they're around me? Yeah? So you can't just look at what am I good at in terms of the information and in terms of the skills. And how to separate that, well, that's why I'm teaching this. That's what I'm doing. It's one of the reasons. There's many reasons, but that's one of them. And what I'm seeing practically, this is I'm almost at my last stop here in circling the planet. But what I'm seeing here as I teach this is that people are learning to do this. They're learning to separate, what did my parents think I should be, or what did my society think I should be, or what was I pushed into, or what was I externally good at, or how did people label me from who I am. I mean, I talked to one man in Auckland, he said, my whole life people have been telling me I'm an artist. I am not an artist. He said, every time someone says you're an artist, I think inside, I am not an artist. I said, what do you want to do? He said, I want to work in the field of government. I said, what do you want to do? He said, I want to do planning. I said, but I'm looking at things, I'm thinking, now why is that building falling apart? Why is that falling apart? And these people should be taken care of, and these people should be taken care of. He's working in the field of artistry, but he belongs in the field of government. And after about half an hour, we came out that he really should be an urban planner. And it was interesting. At one point I said to him, the government also does planning for non-urban areas. It also does planning for wildlife areas and parks and things like that. And when I said that, his face went like this. I said, you don't want to do that, do you? He said, no. And he's 38, I think. I mean, it's sad that someone's 38 and just now figuring out that they have the mentality of government and working in artistry. And it goes the other way too. I have people who told me, my parents were running businesses and they trained me in business. They made sure I got a business degree, but I'm in the field of artistry. I had someone recently tell me also, she said, I'm being pushed to be a leader in the field of ideas, and I just want to be an artist. I don't want to do that. She said, I'm not able to sleep. I'm getting stomach aches. I'm so unhappy. She said, I already signed a contract for another year, and I'm not going to break my word, but I'm miserable. And everyone's pushing me, you're so good at it, you're so good. I just hate it. It's not me, it's not me. So I see people who are discovering it. We have in the book, in Appendix B, we have an exercise where you can go through and do. It's good to do Appendix A first, which is where you're identifying the prosperity types of the fields. And then in Appendix B, we have a self-exploratory exercise on which you can do some plans. And we'll be doing tomorrow morning a thing with the prosperity types, with a little exercise on the board with a volunteer to help you. If we have enough time, we can do that with each other. We have things that you can help to discover who am I really under this stuff. That was always like it's under this. Yes.
Krishna, thank you so much for coming and delivering this for us. My question is, where does it come from, who we really are?
Ooh, big question. I don't know. He knows. It's part of that is the nature-nurture debate. How much of this are we born with, and how much of it comes from our environment? As I say, the research shows by age 13 you can tell somebody's values. I have personally seen this often manifest in 3, 4, 5-year-old children, but not always. And I don't think that there's any human walking around on the planet who can absolutely tell you how much of our nature in this life is something we're born with, or how much of it is, what books our mother read out loud when she was pregnant with us. I really don't think anyone can absolutely answer that question, what the percentage is. People have been debating it for centuries. There's a lot of discussion in the Bhagavad Purana and Bhagavad Gita, especially purport to 1841, the commentary of many of our acharyas, that the cause of these is our association with the shades of ego. But that would have to be from previous lives. lives, not this life. Because, you could be influenced by sattva at 10 a.m. and you could be influenced by rajas at 2 p.m. and you're not going to change your occupation. That would be ridiculous. So, that's not what it is. And even if you're going to say, well, what's my dominant shade that I'm attracted to in this life, that's very hard to assess. And we don't find anything in the scriptures about that if you change your association with the shades of ego, you change your job. What we do find is Krishna telling Arjuna, this is your nature, do it, and do it above the shades. That's what we find. We find the consistent instruction is this is your nature, do it, but do it above the shades. So even if the shades of ego were causative, they were causative in another life, not in this life. Then there's also the distinct possibility, and I don't think this is true for everyone, but I do think this is certainly true for some people, that we have the desire of the Lord is also involved in this. And my own understanding is that this is particularly true for those who've had past lifetimes of spirituality. That there may be some combination of my own particular attachments, my own particular desires, and the Lord saying, hey, you have these particular attachments and these desires, I'd like you to do this work for me. And so I'm going to give you these tools to do it with. And we see this with Arjuna, where, where he had all this political and military acumen, and then when he retired, it was gone. He couldn't access it anymore. Prabhupada said he didn't need it anymore. So some of our nature may be, like Prabhupada said, everyone has some extraordinary talent, and to serve Krishna with that extraordinary talent means successful life. So some of this may be my attachments, my desires in previous life, and some of it may be gifts that the Lord wants me to use in a particular way, and some mixture of those. And my guess is for a lot of people it's a mixture of those. And then there's something that has to do with our environment in this life. I mean, Ayurveda talks about the mentality of the parents at conception, the mentality of the mother during pregnancy, and the conditions of the birth. Those three things as having a huge effect on a person's nature. But again, what's the percentage? How does it work together? I don't know. What we do see is that it can't be repressed, and it can't be changed. That we do see. When Krishna says it can't be repressed, we see it can't be changed. I mean, there's one purport where Prabhupada says that if you're fully Krishna conscious, you can do anything, and he gives the example of Parasamam and Vishvamrupa. So what I say to people is that's true but irrelevant. How many people at first took the wrong way to say that they're fully Krishna conscious? And then Parasamam's God, and Vishvamrupa changed his field of work, but it took him 60,000 years and it wasn't so easy. So, whatever it is, I just look and say, it doesn't really matter why. I mean, Prabhupada talked about, I think it was John Lennon, and he said that he had a dream or something where John Lennon had been a musician in Bengal, and Prabhupada made some statement that for many, 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 many lifetimes, he's been practicing music. Who knows? And ultimately, it's not that important to figure out why in this life am I, why am I wired this way? I look at it as like, what kind of vehicle am I driving? Am I driving a car? Am I driving a bicycle? Am I driving a plane? Am I driving a boat? What am I driving? How did I end up in this particular vehicle? What does it matter ultimately? No matter how much I analyze that, I'm still in the vehicle. Does that make sense to you? And I don't think the answer is the same for everybody. Even if you have two people who love being in the same career, I don't think necessarily the way they got there is exactly the same.
So thank you for the lecture. My question was that even if you do find your perfect career dharma and it's at the right time and all that kind of stuff, isn't it going to change at some points throughout your life? Because I know people who have had their own business and they've gone to work for someone else and changed what they wanted to do multiple times throughout their life, where they thought they had the right thing, and then they moved to something else that's better, and all this kind of stuff. So
Okay. Well, first of all, sometimes people are doing the wrong thing. And if people are in the wrong field, they need to get out of that and get into the right field. If you're in the right field, you can move around in that field. Each of the 4 fields is very broad and encompasses a lot of careers. And if you stay in the same field, and if you continue to get the prosperity types that nourish you, then your specific job can change. And I'll give an example of that tomorrow morning when we look at the fields, at the prosperity types, sorry. We look at the prosperity types tomorrow morning. How there was this one person I know who had a job that had certain prosperity types, and now he has a new job that looks very different from his old job, but it has all the same prosperity types and it's in the same field. Once you get your field and your prosperity types, you have a lot of flexibility to move around as long as you get those things that still nourish you. I just said each field is very good. We'll be looking tomorrow night, tomorrow from the evening, we'll be looking, when we look at the 4 fields, one thing that I'll be asking is, what careers do you think are in this field? And you'll see that there's a wide range of careers. So someone may be doing that and staying within their field and prosperity type, and somebody may be doing that because they thought, oops, wow, I'm really in the wrong place. And now I need to get there. Sometimes a shift can make a big difference if, let's say, you're in the right field, but your work environment is not very good because of other people. Maybe there's other people there that are in the wrong place, or other people that aren't cherishing their field. You follow what I'm saying? And so then sometimes a shift is an improvement, even though you haven't really changed your position. Yes? There's another mic there.
Hi, Krishna.
Hi, Krishna.
The wonderful seminar. You were mentioning earlier by the age of 13, you start seeing the prosperity types in the child.
You can tell a person's basic value system, right? That's the research. That's the empirical research.
By 18, they already kind of know what they want to do with their life.
Ideally.
Ideally. What happens?
That's not what's happening in 2024.
No.
So if we had an ideal society, then your teachers, your parents would help you to understand, at least by age 13, in many cases younger. And you would get training in that so that by the time you were 18 or 20, you'd actually have made progress in your career. Prabhupada says that in the second canto of the Bhagavatam. It says that Gurukulas for training values of life along with specific training for a livelihood. That's not what's happening in the modern society practically at all. But that could be, and that should be what's happening.
In my case, I thought probably about 7 or 8 different careers from middle school to the end of my graduation of high school. And I still don't have an idea or even a field that I want to go into for a career.
Well, hopefully you will in the next few days. And if you don't, and I'm still here, we have time, we can talk. Yes. And that's typical, by the way, for the modern age. You have a lot of company.
Thank you so much. I was just wondering, what if you you can see what your nature is, you can see pretty much like the field that you're in, and you've had maybe blessings from your guru and all blessings to that and everything, but still feel resistance, internal resistance. Is it because of just fear, or is it the influence of tamas or something?
I have to work with you again individually. Maybe you haven't identified your proper prosperity types, or maybe you've been heavily conditioned that there's something wrong with who you are. So, when I teach this, I use somewhat myself as an example. I was heavily taught that there was something wrong with me teaching. That was a fault, that I shouldn't teach people. Obviously, when I was a little kid, I didn't know how to do it very well. And so I probably just irritated people. But, I was constantly being told, stop teaching. Now, thankfully, I was strongly encouraged in research and study and writing and also in public speaking and debate, but not in teaching. And so I hated that part of myself. And if someone had come to me when I was 13 and said, you should teach, I would have fought them with everything that I had. So it was only when I met my god sister, Jyotirmayi, and it was out of necessity, that's a long story. But anyway, she trained me in the Dharma of teaching and in the craft of teaching, and within 2 weeks I realized, oh, this is my thing. We'll be talking about this a bit tomorrow afternoon. It's very, very common because we can't repress our nature, that our nature may come out in ways that are not, that is disturbing to others because we can't stop it and we don't know how to do it properly. And if we're lucky, the people around us recognize this as something potentially good. And we get trained in that Dharma, but that doesn't always happen. Sometimes what happens is people criticize us for being who we are. And so if someone, and I know of a devotee in this situation where it's like, it's so clear to me with this person's nature. It's so clear to everyone who knows him. But because he's been criticized for his whole life, he fights it like anything. No, I don't. And then he does it constantly. So, but you're doing it now. You're doing it now. Yeah. You are. That's what you're doing. And that's very unfortunate. So that does sometimes happen. You know, usually what I see is people come and understand it themselves, but it may take something to let go of it. And we may be trained, you know, in the Hare Krishna movement, we may be trained thinking that certain things are more spiritual. And certain things are more materialistic. Or certain things are more high class, or certain things are more low class, or something. Or out in the world, certain things are higher status. It may be difficult for someone to say, oh, I have the nature to do this thing that, you know, I've always thought was materialistic. I mean, one thing in teaching is I really see how people's prejudices come out. It's really fun. It's unfortunate, but it's kind of fun. That there's just assumptions about certain types of work, that certain types of work is intrinsically corrupt. Like people think financial management is intrinsically corrupt. You don't want any money. You don't want anybody to manage money. It's just like, do you follow what I'm saying? So all these things it may be that you're being pushed into something that's not you. That's possible. Wouldn't be the first time. Or it may be that it is you, but you have some kind of block. Yeah?
Just looking at Srila Prabhupada, you know, he started out in pharmacy, and he said, my father always wanted me to take sannyas and live a life of a holy man, preacher. And then we see in his life as a holy man that he handled huge loads of money and built an organization, and he was also a teacher and giving wisdom, giving knowledge.
Okay, well first of all, we have a little bit of a problem when we take the eternally liberated soul who comes here with a mission and try to categorize them. So we should be careful about that. You know, somebody who's coming to this world eternally liberated with a particular mission may not always fit neatly into things. So that we should be careful. But we're also looking at our occupation, then our place in the life cycle in terms of, are we working at a job, are we retired, are we renunciated? And then we're also looking at the activities of bhakti. So what we're looking at here primarily is what is our career and livelihood in the world? How do we contribute to society in a Krishna conscious way? In bhakti, everybody's a teacher of bhakti, even they may not be a teacher as their livelihood, and they might not want to be a teacher as their livelihood. But everybody's a teacher of bhakti. They may not be a teacher of bhakti in terms of standing up in front of the room with a whiteboard. They may not be a teacher of bhakti in terms of writing curriculum, but every devotee can be a teacher of bhakti.
That's really helpful, yeah.
Is that all right?
Yeah.
That doesn't make it your livelihood.
Yeah.
I mean, I can say a lot more about it, but it's 6 o'clock. We'll take this as the last one.
Hare Krishna, Guruji, thank you so much for taking the time to give the class, and thank you so much for coming to this planet in this crazy time to guide us back to the Father. So I really appreciate you. Hare Krishna. My question is, what is your advice for someone that's drowning in this ocean of delusion and ignorance, and
That's way too vague.
it's not being able to really apply being connected to the Father all the time, every moment, like you've mentioned before in your class?
We have a book over there called Krishna Meditations.
Yeah.
Now, unfortunately, I'm not going to be teaching this here at the farm. I'm only going to be teaching it in the Bhakti Center in town. And that's what I would advise for you. This is, and I was just hearing Srila Prabhupada talk about this in the class the other day. It's always saying, I want to see God. And Prabhupada says, you want to see God as He advises. See Krishna as He advises. Krishna says, I am the light of the sun. See Him as the light of the sun. See Him as the tasting water or any liquid. See Him as your abilities. It's so easy.
That's what I mean. That's what I'm trying, but the mind and the ego keeps on coming on the way. So what is the practical advice for trying that?
The book.
Okay, Hare Krishna.
Yeah? Here, why don't you give me the book? I'll read you something out of it. Here, because I'm not going to teach you here. So. Maybe I should do something really special for you guys that came in this. And it's something. Okay, what should we take? This is one from the Bhagavatam, from 262. His two nostrils are the generating centers of our breathing and of all other airs. So this is designed, you can just open it up anywhere and you leave for 2 minutes, and then you meditate on that. You don't have to worry about your ego and your ignorance anymore. We don't really think about breath and breathing unless we're running a mile and get winded, wondering why we haven't practiced more. We become aware of our nostrils when we are sick, and our nose becomes red from blowing or blocked from inflammation. When we have a cold, bronchitis, asthma, or hay fever, we learn the value of moving air, of breathing, and what it feels like to have no air. When we've been stuck inside all day and finally get the chance to go for a walk, we feel the release of tension when we breathe the outside air. It refreshes the mind, and we feel as if any cobwebs that we have had are blown away. With every inward breath, our breath supplies essential gases to each of our bodily cells, and with every outward breath, it removes the waste gases. When the universal form of the Lord breathes, we each, little cells within His form, get our breath. In turn, our waste gases nourish the plants, whose waste gases then nourish us, and all are nourished by the breathing of the Lord in His magnificent universal form. And you just think of that while you're breathing. Not too long. So that was from the Bhagavatam. This is from the Bhagavad Gita 7:9. I am the heat and fire. On a frosty winter morning, with everything enveloped in snow, the sun rays give gentle and welcoming heat to all that brave the cold. We feel the Lord's love and protection in that heat, even in the heat of our homes when we enter and gain relief from the miserable rain and wind. Without Krishna's heat-giving potency, we would be lost in this cold material world. Krishna is also directly involved in the cooking process as heat, whether the fire comes from wood, gas, electricity, or other fuel. As Krishna in the moon rays gives the juice of life to vegetables, so Krishna as fire's heat releases those juices and gives varieties of flavor and texture to the same vegetables, depending on the cooking method. Inversely, we can also meditate on our dependence on that fire whenever we run out of gas or have an unexpected power cut and can't cook. Is that right?
It works momentarily.
Well, you have to practice.
Okay,
You gotta practice.
that's what I mean.
It'll work if you work. You know, it ain't just gonna fall out of the sky in your head. You gotta do something. But it can be a little something. It doesn't have to be a big something. Often we think if I want a big result, I have to make a big effort. I say this all the time. You have two parallel lines together. All you have to do is move 1 millimeter. And you're going to get all the way over there. Fine? It's a little thing. You can just say, today I'm going to meditate on the fact that the air around me is the breath of God. I think the breath in my body is breath, and the air outside me is air. And I distinguish between air and breath. But this air outside me is the breath of God. It's giving me the gases that I need and giving plants the gases that they need in each of our inhaling and exhaling. It's full of His prana. So maybe today I can think of that for 2 minutes. Maybe tomorrow I can think of it for 2.5 minutes. Maybe the next day I space out and I don't think about it at all. Maybe the next day I think about it for 3 minutes. Maybe the next day I think about it 3 different times during the day. Maybe the next day I space out and I forget it completely. But after a while, trying to do that, it becomes natural. Whenever I'm breathing, that's the kind of time. Bhagavatam says just 1 moment of full consciousness makes our lifetime perfect. Don't try so hard for perfection in this moment that you let go of the little things you can do to get there. All right? Krishna says, I'm the life of all that lives. Can you feel now that you're alive? Just feel that you're alive. Feel the aliveness, the sense of being alive. Just become aware, I'm alive. Run around you, all these other people in this room. They have a sense of being alive. The plants, the animals, the insects. They all have a sense of being alive. The world's full of aliveness. That's Krishna. Or another one I really like, all the, I have a nice picture for this too. We have so many nice pictures here. I mean, even if you don't have any time, just open up, look at the picture. Meditate on that. The birds are His artistic sense. Oh, the rivers and streams. The rivers and the rivulets are His veins. There's all these little rivers and rivulets around here. That's His veins. Just like my veins is taking, nourishment from my heart, spreading all over my body. So all these veins are messengers of the Lord's heartbeat. The trees are His hairs. When you're walking among the trees, it's like you're walking on His arm and between His little hairs, like a little insect walking on His arms. Take any of them, all of them, go from one to another. It just takes a moment, and it changes everything. You're walking on the trees like, oh, I'm walking on the body of God. And then you forget about it in your mind again, but you had that one moment of that whoa. And that was nice, and so then maybe you remember it again. And you remember it again, after a while, it's so nice, you want to remember it more and more often. And after a while, you forget all these problems you have and all this ignorance and stuff that you do. You might also want to change your self-talk a little bit. I'm so in ignorance, and I'm so this, and that. I'm so. Very perfect. I'm just dirty right now, but I'm so. And even if you put diamonds in the mud, the mud doesn't seep into the diamond, you know, it's just superficial. Okay? Got that? Alright, I wrote this for you. With you in mind. Okay, see you tomorrow morning. Krishna will invite you.
7:30?
Yes. And artistry helps everybody else. Now, it would be really lovely if everybody did their own work and everyone cherished their field. But that's not going to happen absolutely, so we need some checks and balances. So ideas people hold government to the rule of law. This is the function of a free press. Government regulates society through laws. Resources regulate society by how and where they spend their money. Artistry by voting with their feet because they're the greatest number of people. But artistry also regulates the other fields, especially those who work in the fine arts, by what they choose to translate into art, music, and theater. Now, within the fields, there should be competition. Srila Prabhupada said competition gives life. No competition between the fields, but only within the fields. And we could say, well, we would want to do our best for its own sake, but when there's competition, we have an opponent, it kind of enthuses us, right? It pushes us to the edges of our ability, reminds us of our own potential, it invigorates us. And there should be healthy competition, like a jewelry district or a fashion district that benefits both the business and the customers, because there's a lot of jewelry stores in the same place. Not where we're trying to erase our competitor or where we're trying to be a predator. Not that kind of competition. So competition in artistry brings us masterpieces and inventions. Competition in resources gives us better quality of resources and better means of distributing them. Competition in government. Think of the benefit of having more than one political party. Or the benefit of being able to try different forms of government in different places. Competition in ideas helps keep science, research, philosophy, and religion responsive to time, place, and circumstance while maintaining its purity. And our last one is all-inclusive sustainable prosperity. Modern economists made a deliberate decision to separate economic theory from the concept of land, and instead to propound a theory that economic prosperity equals economic growth. What's wrong with that? What's wrong with equating economic prosperity with growth? Yes, it's going to result in force, but what's the basic problem with it? That's a result. Yes, that's another result, but what's the basic problem that causes that bad result? Yes.
It's the view is money. The view is money.
Sort of. You're close. Yeah?
Could it be greed?
It definitely produces greed, but again, I'm looking at the why. Why does a theory that prosperity equals growth, why does it have these results? You want to try?
Prosperity equals wealth, maybe? And
Equals growth.
Yeah.
What's the essential problem with that? There's some essential fundamental problem with saying prosperity equals growth, yes? Exactly, limited resources. You cannot keep growing and growing and growing on a finite planet. And so yes, we have these harms, like you were talking about, forcing. If I'm saying prosperity equals growth, I'm going to try to force the land with artificial fertilizers and pesticides. I'm going to try to force animals with antibiotics and hormones. I'm going to try to force even distribution so everybody can eat strawberries all year. Randy Kashipu did that, by the way. Forced all the plants to produce out of season. And I'm going to force people. I'm going to force people to work outside their natural bounds. I'm going to force them to work too many hours. And there's going to be, like you're saying, these artificial ups and downs, and greed. There's going to be this huge wealth disparity between the haves and the have-nots. So the last principle of career Dharma is all-inclusive sustainable prosperity. That our understanding of economics should parallel the planet we're on. And we talk about this, we have a chapter on sustainable prosperity, we have a chapter on what's called mathematical eco-sociology, and then one on vision for a whole society. So how can we actually have an understanding of economics that where everybody, nearly everybody, can be in the right field, enjoying the types of prosperity that enrich them in a sustainable way over the long term. So we looked at identifying our ideal career field and prosperity type, learning the secrets of making our work deeply meaningful, progressing towards dharmic mastery, and the whole system for peace and prosperity. And tomorrow morning, I'll be discussing the prosperity types in depth. Tomorrow afternoon from 4 to 6, I'll be discussing the 4 fields in depth. Then on Thursday afternoon, I'll be discussing in depth what happens when you go into the wrong field. And Friday afternoon, I'm going to teach today's presentation all over again. But obviously a little differently, because having done those things in depth, we'll be able to do some more interactive stuff. Okay, so we have some time. If anyone has any general questions or discussions. Yes?
So, at one point, when a Swami using giving astrology, he calculated that I was in the resources.
Okay, that's without, it would have been better if you hadn't given me a name.
Okay.
Okay. Because he's someone who I like and admire very much. But what I say all the time is, I believe in astrology, but not astrologers. So that's why I probably would have preferred not to have a name, because that kind of puts me in a funny situation. Okay? Generally, when astrologers look at your chart for what field you're in, they're looking just at the risings of the moon, the rising sign of the moon, the moon lagna, and they may be looking more detailed at what's called the moon nakshatra, and they look at what's called the kutas. But if you really want to say what field someone's in by astrology, you have to do a lot more than that, and they don't generally do that. Also, just 500 years ago, there were people who were so expert in this that they just glanced at Sanatana Goswami and knew he had 8 gold coins. If you can find an astrologer that good, Sanatana Goswami didn't say, read my palm, look at my... The guy who just, this guy's got, not just he has gold, he has 8 gold coins. So, what Urmila and I suggest is that you use things like personality types, astrology, and these different career tests as part of the information. One of the things I'm seeing more and more as I've been teaching this, I've been teaching this now for a little more than a year, is that the way we understand this is by introspection, often with the help of people who know us. And that a lot of these kinds of tests are really the opposite of them. That this is not quite the sort of thing you find out by filling in a computer score test or someone looking at a few things in your hand or in your chart. Although I do think astrology, palmistry, personality tests are helpful. They're definitely helpful. But to take them alone is risky. Maybe it wasn't risky 500 years ago or 1,000 years ago, but I just see that right now it's risky. Just like 5,000 years ago, there were people who could actually turn men into women and women into men. Like we had that story in the 9th canto, right, of Ela and Sujuna. You all know that story. Right, she was born a girl and the sister turned her into a boy, and then Lord Shiva turned her back into a girl, and as a girl she got married and had babies, and then the sister turned her back into a male, and as a male he got married and produced babies. They don't know how to do that in 2023. I mean, maybe in 100 years they'll figure out how to do that. I don't know. Right now they're kind of trying. But so what I'm saying is that these sort of things exist, but I don't know if we have access to them. So please be careful. Right? What I have found with this is that it takes, I mean, sometimes people just by hearing this, they just get it, and they'll just, I taught this particular seminar in Lloyd's of London Bank. Actually, I taught it in 45 minutes. Here I took an hour and a half. And to 30 people who had no connection with Krishna consciousness. And afterwards, 3 of them came up to me and said, now I know what I need to do. So sometimes it's like that. People read the book and they go, okay, now I get it. Some people, they read the book, they take all the classes, and still I have to sit down with them. And sometimes it takes 5 minutes, sometimes it takes 2 hours. And then people see it for themselves. It's not something that someone designates them as, it's not something that someone tells them that they are, it's something that they understand for themselves. Is that okay?
Yeah, so that was just the part of the first part of the...
Okay, I just got scared and started trying to astrology.
Yeah. So anyway, just keeping that in mind, when I was a manager for a temple in Perth on the west coast. And at least financially, we never, everything was going fine. Whatever I seemed to do seemed to get the desired result. But any time I tried to do something for myself, business, nothing worked.
That's interesting.
So is that just Krishna's special mercy? If I do it for Krishna, it's great. If I do it for myself, it doesn't work.
Well, we are supposed to be following principles also 6 and 7, doing everything with yajna and doing things above the shades of ego. So I don't know when you say doing it for yourself. Whether we do it for a temple or whether we do it in our own life, it still shouldn't be for ourselves. So I don't know exactly what you mean by doing it for yourself.
Maintaining livelihood.
If it was your natural work, then it should have also worked for your natural livelihood. Yeah. But I'd have to talk to you more individually to get into that, to find out what was the thing and what was going on. Yeah, it's hard in a group as a general principle to answer something like that. I think it's not pouring in it. We can have the door open and get some air. Is that all right? Yeah, we'd have to do some more, a little bit. If you want to, we could do that.
Yeah, it's just some observation I made, and I know other people have spoken the same thing. They said, yeah, that's the same as me. When I do it for Krishna, it works. The same thing, not directly for Krishna, it's not working.
Well, but everything, thank you, everything can be directly for Krishna. So that's kind of the hesitation that I have. Because sometimes we think, well, if I'm doing something for the International Society for Krishna Consciousness Mission, that's directly for Krishna. And if I'm doing something, in general in the world, that's not directly for Krishna. And one of my goals in life is to eliminate that distinction. I have a strong conviction that Krishna would like the heads of government to be God-conscious people. And the heads of Walmart and Monsanto to be God-conscious people. And the people running the media, and the people running the universities, and the people running the scientific research laboratories to be God-conscious people. And that's also directly for Krishna, or it can be. There's one conversation where Prabhupada said that we want the heads of government to be God-conscious people, and someone said, do they have to be members of the Hare Krishna movement? Prabhupada said, no. He said, math is math. And my understanding of the Bhagavad Gita is that Krishna was telling Arjuna, this war for me and this running of the kingdom for me is direct service to me. So this is one of my goals, is to, in the very beginning of spiritual life, you have to be told, this is material, this is spiritual. Because if you tell beginners everything is spiritual, they'll think that smoking and drinking are spiritual. You understand? So you have to say that, but ultimately, Sarvakamidam Brahma and Vasudeva Sarvamiti, ultimately everything is spiritual. It's like 6-year-olds, you have to say to them, you can't do 3 minus 5. They'll just say, you just can't. It's impossible. You just can't do 3 minus, but you can. People do it all the time with their credit cards. It's not that you can't do it. But when you're 6, you're told you can't. It's just not possible. I would like to see a world in which we don't say, oh, this is my work that I'm doing for my family, and that's all mine, and it's all garbage, and the only value of it is the money, and I'm miserable for 8 to 10 hours a day, and I can't wait till I can just retire. And let's just make communities away from everybody else, and let the world just go to hell. And hopefully there'll be an atom bomb and they'll all blow each other up. I hear devotees say things like this. It's just like, I heard devotees say that. Hopefully there'll be a nuclear war, he said. There's a leader. And I'm like, you know. Yeah, Prabhupada says in the 16th chapter, that's the demons. We want peace and prosperity. We want to build a society where everybody falls in love with God, and hopefully a lot of them see God like that. So the Krishna Meditations book is like that too, how to see the world as spiritual. So sometimes if we get stuck in this distinction, that this is for Krishna and this is for me, so Krishna may make it unsuccessful, not because he doesn't want us to do anything like that, but because he doesn't want us to have this kind of a conception. That's possible. Again, I don't know in your case, but that's possible. It's possible.
Thank you, Prabhu. So I guess my experience for the last however long it has been, like, we live in this Western culture which it's kind of one size must fit all. Success, fame, lots of money, that kind of conditioning.
Yes.
And I've definitely felt on and off the weight of that, and
Yes.
the difficulty in resisting that.
Mm.
And my personality type, or how I've been conditioned, has been like, let me wear many different masks. Like, I identify so much with all the different areas, and have found success in some of those areas, and found difficulty in the same areas. And so when I approach this question of Dharma, I'm just totally confused, bewildered. So my question is kind of like, how do you find the discernment between culture and conditioning, and how do you start to chip away at where am I in this, where's my intuition, where am I going?
I like that. You packed so much into what you said right there. I'm thinking about how Western medicine generally gives everyone the same medicine for the same disease, whereas in Ayurveda or traditional Chinese medicine, they look at your type. Like if you have a lot of kapha, then it's good to eat potatoes, but if you have a lot of vata, it's not good to eat potatoes. They're not just saying, well, this is just healthy for everyone. Like there's one devotee I know who was, eating all this healthy food, and then it gave him kidney stones. And he was like, oh, wrong healthy food. So yeah, the traditional wisdom is that one man's food is another man's poison, and it's not a one-size-fits-all. And anyway, success isn't just about money and status for anybody. It just isn't. It's a real success is about being the best version of myself in the service of something greater than myself. That's true in the spiritual world, where, we're gopis. And instead of my teaching, sorry, my raincoat knocked out my hair. Instead of teaching lesson 1 now, I'm going to teach lesson 1 tomorrow morning at 7:30. And all of you who brave the weather to come, you're going to get a treat. And we're going to do the whole overview of the whole book now. Now we're going to teach that again. When is my last day of teaching again? Friday, right? Yes. So we're going to teach this again on Friday, but it's a little complex, and so there's no harm with having it twice. And if you guys want, having come today, you don't need to come Friday, as you like, because I'll be doing the same thing on Friday. All right. And we do have copies of the book there. Plus we have a couple other books. So this book became a bestseller on Amazon for about a month, which was really cool. All right. And if you'd like to get more information, we are working on a complete online course, as well as an audiobook. And if you sign up there, we will let you know when we come up with more stuff. So I'd like you to imagine that your daily life has gradually come to include all the practices and activities that you've always dreamed of, that you love the work you're doing, what you're producing, and how you're making a meaningful contribution, that your work is giving you the kinds of prosperity that truly enrich you and that you joyfully share with others. Now imagine the whole world is working like that. So we're going to look at identifying our ideal career field and prosperity type, which is what most people are interested in. And so our classes tomorrow, the next day, and Thursday, and Wednesday and Thursday, because we're going to do 2 sets tomorrow. So our classes Wednesday and Thursday are going to focus primarily on that. But that's not enough, really, to be happy in our work. We want to expand beyond that, to learn the secrets of making our work deeply meaningful, and even beyond that, to progress toward Dharmic mastery, and then we'll look at the whole system for peace and prosperity. Srila Prabhupada, the founder of the Hare Krishna movement, used this term, peace and prosperity, at least 195 times. So Career Dharma has 9 principles, and I'd like it if we could read these together. Connecting our nature with our livelihood, advancing through life while nourishing our nature, extending our prosperity to others, ethical and meaningful work of value, delight in cherishing our prosperity and field of work, having celebrations of the sacred in our life and work, above the shades of ego, maintaining societal balance, cooperation between the fields, and competition within the fields, and all-inclusive, sustainable prosperity. And when you put those together, they spell Career Dharma. Okay, so we're going to look at first identifying our prosperity type and career field. And the first principle is that we should connect our nature with our livelihood. And first we're going to look at prosperity types. So we're going to spend an hour, Krishna willing, tomorrow morning from 8:30 to 9:30 just discussing the prosperity types. So we're going to go through that very briefly now. So I'd like to ask all of you, have you ever met anyone, heard of anybody who didn't have a lot of money, but who had a rich, satisfying life? How many of you have ever heard or met such a person? Okay. And have you ever met or heard about, read about any person who has a lot of money, but they have a poor, unsatisfying life? Have you ever heard of any such persons? If you haven't, I suggest you look at the headlines in the news, and any news, any headlines, anything. Now, certainly money is important. I mean, I need money. I can't buy shoes without money. You know, and we have to have some money. However, it's entirely possible to try to conceive of the idea that money and prosperity are not equivalent to the same thing. Many times when people look for a job, they're just thinking about money. How much money will I make? I cannot count how many people have come up to me and said, well, I hate my work. It's not my nature. I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing, but at least I'm making money. And then you think, wow, what an unfortunate way to live. So the Bhagavad Gita and the Bhagavad Purana talk about 6 ways of being prosperous. And again, we're going to go into these in depth tomorrow morning. So we'll just look at these briefly now. So the first is Aishvarya. Aishvarya comes from the Sanskrit word Ishvara, which means a controller. Srila Prabhupada sometimes translates Aishvarya just as wealth or as opulence, but literally it means to be a controller, and it literally means to have some sort of positional administrative leadership. And there are many of us who feel enriched by this. And one of my friends in Europe used to have a business selling some essential oils and other health things like that, and she said that now she's not really involved in the marketing and the sales, but rather she helps people who help people who help people. She manages teams of teams. And she's really found this to be deeply satisfying. And I said, well, how many people are you managing? She said, altogether 50,000. So some of us really feel enriched by being in a position of leadership, where we have some administrative ability, and we're bringing out people's talents, and we're coordinating teams and pulling projects together. And there are other people who are just, they don't really care if they have that or not. And some people actively don't like this. There's some people who want to just work on their own, or just be part of a team, and they want someone else to take the managerial responsibility. So I'd like you to think of some time when you've had this as part of your work, and some time when you haven't had it. And how do you feel in each situation? When I'm asking how do you feel, I'm not just asking for some emotion. What happens in your life? Like often what happens when we need these to be nourished and don't have them is we try to get them in some other way. So just to think for a few seconds, when have I had some position of administration and leadership in my work? When have I not had it? How do I feel when I have it? How do I feel when I don't have it? And next is Gyan. Gyan is knowledge. So some of us have careers or livelihoods that force us to keep learning. You just can't do the work unless you keep learning new things. And for some of us, this is the way that we feel enriched. We want to be constantly learning. And again, there are other people that are kind of meh. And there are others who really don't want this in their work. Who said, you know, gosh, I really should be doing that, but then I'd have to go back and take more courses, and I don't want to have to learn more stuff, and why do I have to keep studying stuff? So again, I'd like you to think of when you had Gyan as part of your work, when you've been in a situation where you didn't have it. How do you feel, and what are the effects on you when you have it? And how do you feel when you don't have it? And then we have virya. Virya is health and strength. So some people have jobs that involve a lot of physicality. Moving things, building things, carrying things, they're dancing, they're something that's where their job is actually aiding their physical strength and their health. And it might not be in terms of physicality. Maybe they're a chef in a healthy restaurant and they also have to sample all the meals, and so they're also eating healthy food. Or something where your work is actually aiding your health and strength. So for many of us, we really want this in order to feel rich. If there's not some health component to our work, and we're not talking about work that makes other people healthy, we're talking about work that aids our health and our strength. Some people, if they don't have this, they're really not happy, no matter how much money they're making. You know, somebody who wants to be outside moving things and has a desk job, and they're not going to be happy. And other people really don't care about this, and for some people they really don't like it. They really don't want to have work that has this component to it. They'd rather take care of their health separately. So again, if you could think of when you had some work that involved virya, when you had some work that didn't, and how do you feel when you have it, and how do you feel when you don't have it. And then there's Shri. So Shri means literally like kind of sparkliness. It has to do with beauty, so visual beauty, or auditory beauty, or olfactory beauty, or the beauty of nature, or it can deal with charismatic leadership. Now this charismatic leadership is different from the positional leadership of Aishwarya. In Aishwarya, we actually have some position, some administrative post, whereas with Shri, you're simply inspiring people. Now, some people have both Aishwarya and Shri, and some have only one or the other. And again, you could think of any aspect of Shri. Maybe you're working a lot with flowers that are both visually beautiful and smell beautiful. Or maybe you're working a lot with music. Or maybe you're working a lot in some beautiful natural scene, or maybe you have some job where you have some charismatic leadership. So maybe you have just one or two of these in your work. Now again, there are some people for whom this is really essential. That if they don't have Shri as part of their work, they feel poor, they feel empty. Other people really don't care. You know, if someone else wants to make things beautiful, fine, but it's not their thing. I mean, for some people, they actually find it annoying. Like, why do I have to deal with this? Let me just deal with practical life. So I'd like you to think about, again, when you've had this, and when you haven't had it, and how do you feel when you have it, and how do you feel when you don't have it. And yasha. Yasha means fame, but this is a particular type of fame. Actually, yasha is a person in the Bhagavad Purana whose parents are kirti and dharma. And kirti means to talk about, dharma means what's authentic, what's righteous. So it's people talking about you, encouraging you, and giving you admiration, recognition, because of your pious, authentic behavior. And it really implies that there's a community. This is not just someone on stage who's influencing other people. That's really more Shri. But yasha is, you have a supportive community as part of your work. Now again, there are some people for whom this is essential for them to feel enriched. For some people, it's essential even for them to get anything done. I know some people that really find it hard to be productive just working on their own. Whereas if they're working as part of a supportive team, then they're naturally inspired to be productive. And other people that it really doesn't matter, and other people find it annoying. Some people really want to work by themselves. They find social interaction and admiration and recognition to be simply an abomination. So again, if you can think about when you've had yasha as part of your work, and when you haven't had it, and how do you feel when you have it, and how do you feel when you don't have it. Now we're going to look at vairagya. Vairagya is a funny way to be rich. A lot of people think of it as anti-prosperity. Ragya means attachment, vaya means without. So when you have jobs that have a lot of freedom and equanimity, maybe you have a flexible schedule, there's a lot of travel as part of your job, you can live a very minimalistic lifestyle. Or perhaps it's work that doesn't involve you in the social or emotional side of other people's lives, where you can have a lot of detachment. Or maybe it's a job where you deal with terrible, nasty things in life that naturally make you detached. Like criminal defense attorneys, for example. They have to have a lot of vairagya as part of their work. So again, for a lot of people, without this, they feel impoverished. They need a lot of vairagya in their life in order to feel prosperous. Some people don't care, and other people really don't like this. Some people really want some regulated, secure work. The opposite of this is security, or they want to have some work where they can have more things. Like I definitely know people like this. Right? When they travel, they bring 4 check-in suitcases, and they're very uncomfortable with a super minimalist lifestyle, with a lot of uncertainty about what they're doing. So I'd like you to think about when you've had a lot of vairagya in your work, when you haven't had it. How do you feel when you have it? How do you feel when you don't have it? Okay, so again, those of you who came late, we decided because of the weather that we're actually going to do lesson 1 tomorrow morning, and what we're doing now is the overview, which we're going to teach again on Friday. Okay? So we're not going to go more into depth into the prosperity types now. We'll do that tomorrow. So tomorrow from 7:30 to 8:30, we're going to go discuss these prosperity types in more depth, give more examples. We're going to do an exercise. For those of you who get the book, there is an exercise on the prosperity types in Appendix A. That's the other book. You can get that one too. Career Dharma book on Appendix A on page 490. There's an exercise on the prosperity types. And the answers are also there on page 515. But what you want to do is to go through the exercise and try to figure out what it is and then check with the answers. Yeah? There's also a chapter, I think it's chapter 2, specifically on the prosperity type. So if you'd like to read that before tomorrow morning's class, then you'll get much more out of the class. So I had one professor who said, if you read the book before the class, you get more out of the class. If you read the book after the class, you get more out of the book. But we will be discussing this in depth, tomorrow morning between 7:30 and 8:30. Okay, now we're going to go on to another way of matching our nature to our work, the 4 fields of work. And we're going to be going into this in depth tomorrow between 4 and 6. So tomorrow between 4 and 6, we're going to be discussing the definition of these 4 fields and the tendencies and the expertise of the people in the 4 fields. So right now, again, I'm just going to touch on this. So in the Bhagavad Purana and the Bhagavad Gita, all the hundreds of thousands of careers are grouped into 4 categories. And my co-author, Dr. Ruchira Datta, and I really spent a lot of time trying to understand, why these 4 categories? What was the benefit? Why not just say whatever work you're doing, just do it dharmically? Why have this, titles, and why have this separation into these 4 fields? And there's a number of reasons. First of all, these fields always exist in human society. Different specific occupations come and go. There weren't any software engineers 200 years ago. There aren't a lot of blacksmiths right now. But these 4 fields always exist. But the biggest reason that we have this division is that each of them has a different dharma. Now I'm sure as we were talking about the prosperity types, each of you thought of 1 or 2 or 3 that you thought, oh, these are really important for me to have in my work. But with these 4 fields, everyone is only in one field. Because the dharma between these fields is mutually exclusive. And if you were in more than one field, you'd be at war with yourself. But you basically wouldn't be able to function. Because they have mutually exclusive dharmas. So as I say, tomorrow evening from 4 to 6, we're going to look much more in depth at these different dharmas. Now you notice here we have English terms for these. So I'd like to ask those of you who are participating in these seminars that you do know the Sanskrit terms for these, but I want you to forget that you do. You will be very tempted to translate these into the Sanskrit words. Please don't. At least for a week, just forget that you know the Sanskrit words and try to have an open mind. The reason we do that is that most of us have some sort of misconception about those Sanskrit words. And if we kind of have a fresh start, then when we go back to those terms, we can go back to them with like, oh, that's what it's about. You will be tempted, I know that. Your mind will go, oh, that is So I don't know if these are the best possible words to pick. Urmila and I took a long time. Her is my co-author's initiated name is Urmila. We took a long time to try to figure out what words we wanted to use. I'm sure they're not perfect, but they give you some idea of the 4 fields. When we look at the 4 fields, again, we're going to look at them in 2 ways. What's the nature of the fields? You could think of it as containers. And what's the nature of the people who work in the field? So the first is artistry. So the field of artistry provides all the functionality of society. It's what makes society work. Without the field of artistry, nothing works. Everything would be broken. They provide all the support for society and all the beauty of society. The field of artistry also provides all the pleasures of society. Metaphorically, you can think of it that the field of artistry is supplying all the salt and the spices in food. Without this field, life would be just like plain rice, without the salt. The mentality of the people in the field of artistry is they get great pleasure from service to others. They want to paint a picture that hangs in someone else's house. They want to fix the plumbing in someone else's house. They want to clean someone else's house. They want to cook a meal for someone else. This mentality is very close to bhakti, where you get your pleasure from serving the Lord and serving the devotees. It's a general mood of service. The mentality of this field is also one of satisfaction. The people in this field are not ambitious. They're generally, unless they're manipulated by somebody else, they're not generally interested in making a lot of money. They want to be treated with dignity and respect. They want to be compensated fairly for their craft or their service. They want to have a comfortable home to live in and good food to eat, nice clothes to wear, and a loving family. It's basically what they want. If I've got a nice house to live in, good food, people who love me, decent clothes to wear, I can aim for high quality and integrity in my craft or service that I'm offering, And the people that I'm serving are happy with me. I'm able to please my customers or my clients, they're happy. It's a field of satisfaction. It's also a field of honesty. The people who follow the Dharma of this field are very honest about the value of the goods or services that they're providing. And we'll talk about that more tomorrow afternoon. And the main questions they ask about their work are, is it beautiful and is it supportive? Is it beautiful and is it supportive? Okay, we're going to go on to the field of ideas. So the field of ideas provides all of the wisdom and guidance for society. You can think of it as kind of like the eyes of society. So these are the people that provide the training, the guidance, the counseling, the knowledge, the wisdom, often therapy. And they usually do it through language. They may do it through mathematics. And some of them also use the fine arts. So the mentality of the people in this field, this is also a field of satisfaction, like the field of artistry. But here the satisfaction is different. Here people are satisfied if they have a vibrant mental and intellectual life, and they're not so interested in the comforts of the world, like a nice house, a nice food, and nice clothing. And like the field of artistry, it is a field of honesty, but it's a different kind of honesty. Instead of honesty about the value of their product or service, they're honest in terms of giving straightforward truth, even if people don't necessarily want to hear it. Now, whereas the field of artistry, you're serving people directly, you want to please a customer or a client. In the field of ideas, it's kind of an unsentimental field. It's kind of a field of detachment. People in this field often feel that they're not really participating in life, but it's more like they're kind of watching it from a distance and commenting on it. And the main questions they ask about their work are, is it true and is it wise? Now again, tomorrow night we'll be looking at each of these in much more depth. Yeah? Tomorrow evening we'll be spending a half an hour on each of the fields. Okay, so looking now at the field of resources. This is the field that provides all of the resources for human society. It provides all the raw materials for food, clothing, shelter, medicines, every furniture, utensils. They're providing all of the raw materials. This is the only field that's generating wealth. The other fields manipulate it, move it around, but this is the only one that's actually producing it. And the mentality of people in this field is expansive. This is not a field of satisfaction. The Bhagavad Purana says the people in this field are always thirsty. Their mood is that they're providing not only wealth for themselves, but for everyone else. And therefore they have this expansive mood, which is often misunderstood by people in artistry or ideas particularly. Because it appears to be personally ambitious, but it's not. It's ambitious to feed the society, and clothe the society, and provide all the materials for society. The questions these people ask about their work are, is it sustainable and is it regenerative? You can think of a farmer who saves seeds from the harvest in order to grow something the next season. This is the concept of profit. That you have something that you put back into the business so that the business is sustainable and regenerative. These people are the main employers of society. They pay the bulk of the taxes. They give the bulk of the charity. And they look at the flow of resources in society so that they can keep things sustainable and regenerative when things are going well and when things are going poorly. When the weather is in their favor, when it's not. When the economic system is moving in the right direction, when it's not. That they can still make sure that in a sustainable, regenerative way, they're giving wealth to society. Now looking last at the field of government. So whenever you have human beings in any more than a very simple grouping, you need some sort of organization. You need somebody to make rules, you need someone to enforce those rules, you need someone to give protection from internal or external threats, and you need someone to provide an infrastructure that's not possible for people to do on their own. You know, people can't just, it's not that everyone's going to go out and create a little piece of the road in front of their house. Somebody has to create roads, and somebody has to create schools and hospitals and things like that. Yeah. So this field of government doesn't just apply to political governments, which get money from taxation and fines and fees, but also on a very small scale to a landlord. So if a landlord has an apartment building, that's like a very small kingdom. And the landlord is taking care of people the way a government would take care of its people, making sure there's parking, and there's water, and there's electricity, and people have what they need. Also, in the modern day, this also applies to people working in, ironically, what's called non-government organizations, which actually are doing the work of government. It basically happens when government doesn't do its job, right? And something different. It happens when government doesn't do its job, and then some charity organization has to step in and do the work of government. So you have some organization that collects charity, and it does that kind of work. It builds roads, it feeds people. You follow what I'm saying? Traditionally, in the Bhagavad Purana, it says people in government don't get money from charity, but we do have organizations in the modern age who do government work from charity rather than taxes. So these people are the protectors of society, but they're really like the big parents. So both in artistry and in government, people are taking care of other people, but in artistry they're doing it like an assistant, and in government they're doing it like a parent. They're really like the big mothers and fathers of all of society. And this distinction between this mood of artistry and government is quite important. You know, people in government are not trying to please a customer or a client, but they're trying to make sure that everyone is taken care of. So like the field of resources, this is an expansive field. And both resources and government are fields of diplomacy. So in government, you have to be diplomatic or you're going to start a war. Right? In resources, you have to be diplomatic or nobody will buy your stuff. You can't tell people how much profit you make. So they're both fields of expansive diplomacy, although a little different kind of expansive and a little different kind of diplomacy. And the mood in this field of government is about justice and fairness. Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. I had a tissue in my pocket, but I didn't have a Band-Aid in my hand. Thank you. So their mood is it just? Is it honorable? Those are the questions that they ask about their work. And it's all about justice, honor, fairness, morals, and ethics. Now Krishna says, don't do someone else's work. He says this twice in the Bhagavad Gita, once in the 3rd chapter, once in the 18th chapter, and we're going to be discussing this in depth on Thursday afternoon. So Thursday between 4 and 6, we're really going to go deep into what happens when we do someone else's work. Now, if Krishna says this twice in the Bhagavad Gita, there's only 2 verses he says twice, it must be important. It's something that he really emphasizes. Don't follow someone else's path. Don't pretend to be something that you're not. And Krishna uses this interesting word, bhayavaha. He says, if you do someone else's work, your work becomes a vehicle of fear. Interesting term, huh? A vehicle of fear. You can think of it like if you try to drive your bicycle on the water, or drive your car in the sky. Your vehicle would be made of fear. Now, what does this do to us on a personal level? I mean, as Urmila and I were really studying this, we saw how wise Krishna is, telling us to do our own work and delineating work into these 4 fields. Because spiritual life is so much easier when we do our own work. And spiritual life is so much harder when we don't. When we do our own work, it's called Swadharma, and others' work is called Paradharma. So when I do my own work, I'm going to feel energized. I may even regret that I have to take a break to eat or a break to sleep. When I do someone else's work, I'm going to feel depleted. When I'm doing my own work, my mind acts as my friend. Krishna talks in the Bhagavad Gita that your mind can be your friend or enemy. When you're doing your own work, making your mind your friend is extremely easy. When we're doing other people's work, our mind acts as our enemy. When I'm doing my own work, I'm easily detached from the results of my work. And you notice how in the Gita, Krishna says, do your own work and be detached from the results. Why is that easy when I'm doing my own work? Prabhupada says that when we desire that which is natural, that is desirelessness. To desire to be what is natural is not a desire. Prabhupada gave the example of saying, I want to eat. No one says, what's wrong with you? You want to eat. So to want to be who we are is desirelessness. And therefore we're just so satisfied being who we are, we're easily able to be detached from the results. And when you're detached from the results, then you're going to be happy whether things go poorly or well externally. You follow? If I'm doing someone else's work, then my only satisfaction is in the results. And I get bound by my work. Going on to principle 2, advancing through life while nourishing our nature. And we'll talk about this again more tomorrow afternoon. But there's a difference between being expert in a job and having the inclination for it. So the Gita and the Bhagavatam mostly describe the expertise in work. Someone who's already dharmically expert in each of the 4 fields. But the problem is that until I've had training in my dharma, until I recognize my dharma, I may not yet exhibit expertise. Therefore, when we want to say what is our nature, we're looking for inclination, not just expertise. Does that make sense? If I say, what are you good at, and you've never had any experience or training in what your nature is, you may not even know you're good at it. So we're looking for what is the dharmic inclination. And Krishna says our nature cannot be repressed. So this means our dharmic inclination is going to manifest whether we wanted to or not. We cannot be rewarded out of it, we cannot be punished out of it, we cannot be manipulated out of it. We are going to exhibit our basic nature. And we'll talk about this in some detail tomorrow afternoon. Ideally, those who guide us and train us when we're young recognize these 4 natures, as well as inclinations toward the prosperity types, and can guide us in that at a young age. The research shows that people's values are evident by the time they're 13. My own experience dealing with hundreds of children is that sometimes it's way before that. So that's the ideal. And then, when we're young, we get trained in our dharma. When we're in the prime of life, we get a livelihood that's in our dharma. When we're in middle age, we retire, and we can guide others. And we're at the end of life, we have nothing to do with this, and we prepare for our final journey. So many times that's all people care about. I just want to find out what is my nature, match my nature to my work. But that's not going to be enough to give us full satisfaction. We also have to do principle 3, extending our prosperity to others. So there's nothing in the Vedic tradition where somebody is a single person, they work, they get prosperity, and they keep it all for themselves. At least you have to share with a partner, with children, with your parents, with the creatures outside around your house, with somebody. We are, even if we're great souls, even if we're enlightened, even if we're liberated souls, Krishna says in the 18th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, everyone should give in charity. Now, by the way, giving to Krishna is not charity unless you don't know it's Krishna. Giving to Krishna is yajna. That's another principle. That's principle 6. Just like if I offer food to Krishna, that's yajna. And then when I distribute the prasadam to others, that's charity. You see the difference? Yeah? Now, the scriptures say that how much money we make in this life is directly related to how charitable we were in our previous lives. You can work really, really hard in this life, but if you weren't charitable, you're not going to make much. However, there's also a lot of empirical research that if you're charitable even in this life, you will make more money in this life. There's a direct result between how charitable someone is and how much wealth they have. Evidently, Krishna wants us to share. Now, not only should we share the money that we earn, but we should also be charitable in terms of our prosperity type. Whatever type of richness we're enjoying, we should share with others. You can think of this in many ways. This is just a small sample. We discuss this extensively in our book with many, many examples. So you can think of it that whatever prosperity I am enjoying, I should use that as a volunteer. I should use that to help others. I'm enjoying beauty, I should share beauty. I'm enjoying leadership, I should help others to be leaders. Or I should use my leadership ability in some kind of voluntary work. Does this make sense to everybody? Yes? What's nice about sharing our prosperity type is that even if we're not making a lot of money, we can still be charitable. So is that enough? We're working in the right place, we're giving in charity, but our work also should be ethical and meaningful work of value. So the first part of that is that our work should be honest. We should be representing the goods or services we produce honestly, charging a fair price. If we have others in our employ, we should be compensating them fairly. I'm sure you all know of many businesses where that doesn't happen, right? So our work should be honest. Is that enough? Well, we also have to do work that's of value. The work we're doing should be contributing something that's genuinely needed in society. So a lot of modern work provides just artificial needs, right? Needs that aren't needs that everybody could do without. Or something harmful. The tobacco industry, the alcohol industry, pornography industry. So our work should be providing something that is actually not harmful and that is of value. Now, for a lot of people, that's going to be enough. But if this is all we do, we are going to stay within the law of karma and what Rukmini and I call the cycle of frustration. So we'll do ordinary Dharma from which we'll get our prosperities and which we'll enjoy pleasure. But if that's all we're doing on the external mundane level, we're ultimately going to be dissatisfied and we're going to want to be liberated. But most attempts at wanting to be liberated are also frustrating. Someone will say, well, I'll quit my career, or I just won't work anymore, or I'll just join some volunteer group. And eventually they go back to their Dharma, because remember, it can't be repressed. And they keep going through the cycle. So the answer is prema pumartha mahan, that one should be working with love. Love for one's job, love for oneself, love for the people that we serve, and ultimately love for Krishna. And we have a chapter called Esoteric Work of Value, which I think, personally, is the most far out part of the book, where we talk about how that if we work in this way, with love, that we then become an actual agent. Because Krishna says when we work materially, we're not really doing anything. You're not really doing anything, you're just being manipulated by karma. But when we work with love, we're actually an agent. We can actually be an agent of good for others, and we can be an agent of good that they don't even deserve. We can give people causeless mercy, and we can dynamically increase good for others that doesn't have to be paid for in some karmic sense. So this is the perfection of value in our work. Now remember I said that Krishna mentions this verse twice about don't do someone else's work. And we already talked about 3 ways that for our own self, doing someone else's work can damage me. But doing someone else's work also damages society, and therefore if I do someone else's work, that's actually unethical work. So again, we're going to have a whole class on this Thursday afternoon, so I'm going to go through this quickly. Government and resources. This is if someone with the mentality of government works in resources, or someone with the mentality of resources works in government. These are both fields of expansion and diplomacy. But government is working as a parent to make sure that everyone has everything that they need, and they have a mood of great generosity. And those in resources are looking at a particular flow of resources, bringing it to themselves, making sure there's a sustainable regenerative profit, and making sure in an unsentimental way that people are going to get wealth. When people with the mentality of government do work in the field of resources, they don't understand the sustainable regenerative nature of the field. They'll set prices thinking about social justice. The business will fail. The employees are out of a job. The customers are out of the goods they need. Think about when the government took over farms in the former Soviet Union. What happened? Starvation. When people with the mentality of resources work in the field of government, they'll try to make a profit out of government. We have private prisons in the U.S. where do they want the prisoners to be reformed? No, they want repeat customers. Crossing government and ideas. These are both fields that lead society, but in different ways. Ideas leads in a detached, visionary way, and government leads in a practical way. And government is an expansive field. Ideas is a satisfied field. Government is a diplomatic field. Ideas is a truthful field. When people with the mentality of ideas work in government, they're too merciful, and criminals go free. When people with the mentality of ideas work in government, they take too long to research things. And so decisions that need to be made for the benefit of the people don't get made. They'll spend 20, 30 years researching some decision, and in the meantime, people are suffering. When people with the mentality of government work in the field of ideas, they will tend to politicize knowledge. Think about history textbooks written by people in government. Can you trust them? No. And this damages the trust of the people in the field of government, which harms society. Government-minded people may also impose a very hierarchical structure on the field of ideas, preventing the free flow of knowledge. Crossing ideas and resources. These are both very unsentimental fields. But resources is expansive, ideas is satisfied, resources is diplomatic, ideas is a field of honesty. The ethical system of these two fields is very radically different. And so if a person with the mentality of ideas works in resources, they may feel that it's unethical to make a profit and be money-minded, in which case the business fails. But somebody with the mentality of resources working in ideas may think it's unethical to spend money and people's time doing theoretical research that doesn't make money. They'll say that's not ethical. And so they may neglect a lot of the work of the field. Or they may try to make a profit out of knowledge, which again distorts the field of ideas and causes people to lose trust in the product of the field of ideas. I'm sure as I'm saying this, you're thinking of how this is happening in society. Crossing government and artistry. What's similar about these fields is that these fields serve people directly. But artistry does as an assistant, government does more like a parent. Artistry is a field of satisfaction, government is an expansive field. Artistry is a field of honesty, government is a field of diplomacy. When people with the mentality of government work in artistry, they may find it very difficult to please a customer or a client. They may become insubordinate. And often their desire for justice and honor and fairness and ethics gets very frustrated in the field of artistry, where they have to please someone else. And so often government-minded people working in artistry become agitators or vigilantes because there's so much trying to do justice and there's no outlet for it. When people with the mentality of artistry work in government, they're not going to have the basic courage that's a feature of government. They're not going to run into the burning building or run into the building where there's shooting going on to save people. They're going to think of a lot of the work of government as just some kind of politics that they don't want to do. Or they may impose a bureaucracy on government. Crossing ideas and artistry. These are both fields of satisfaction and honesty, but a very different kind of satisfaction and a very different kind of honesty. And in artistry, you want to please a customer or a client, and in ideas, you want to give the unvarnished truth. When people with the mentality of ideas work in artistry, just like government-minded people working in artistry, they're not inclined to please customers and clients. They may be insubordinate, they may be late, and they just don't have that mood. People with the mentality of ideas working in artistry, they may not appreciate that the Dharma of artistry is to give pleasure and beauty to society. They may think that that's foolish, and they may dry up the field. Or they may get pulled into the sensual nature of the field and use their intelligence to manipulate people. When those with the mentality of artistry work in the field of ideas, they may have difficulty dealing with the abstractions of the field of ideas and miss a lot of subtle context. They may also have difficulty doing that work at all because they just think it's useless. It just doesn't seem to be of any practical value to them. Or they may sensualize knowledge, which again hurts people's faith in the field of ideas. So people with the mentality of government doing ideas work may politicize knowledge. People with the mentality of resources working in ideas may profitize knowledge. People with the mentality of artistry working in ideas may sensualize knowledge. And in all of those cases, people's faith in the field of ideas gets diminished, and therefore people lose the guidance and wisdom that's supposed to come out of that field. Crossing resources and artistry. Both of these fields deal with the practical side of life. But resources is expensive, ideas is satisfied. Resources is diplomatic, ideas is a field of honesty. When people with the mentality of resources work in artistry, they don't really appreciate this providing of pleasure and beauty. They want to provide wealth. They don't really want to provide pleasure and beauty. So they may take the crafts and produce them in a factory. So more people can get it faster. They're interested in profit and expediency and expansion. They may encourage drug-fueled sports. They may produce entertainment that's not uplifting, but that makes a lot of money by throwing in a bunch of sex and violence into it. When people with the mentality of artistry work in resources, they're not going to be interested in this expansive nature. And so it's going to be very, very difficult for them to actually grow a business. They'll be too interested in pleasing the customer or the client. And they'll say, oh, I can give this to you at a discount, or I can give this to you for free. And the business goes under. They may not be able to relate to the fact that their business has to be sustainable and regenerative. So they may create businesses that pollute the environment. So again, we're going to go into this in much further depth on Thursday. We have 2 chapters, I think 6 and 7 in the book, where we really go into this in depth with a lot of historical examples of what happens when people with the mentality of one field work in the wrong place. All right, now we're going to go a little further and progress to Dharmic mastery. Because it's possible for somebody to work in the right place, to be doing honest work of value, but not to be cherishing their prosperity type or their field. And these are the 2 main problems we see in modern society. One is that people are in the wrong place. The other is that they're in the right place, but they're not taking care of the integrity of their particular work. So all of our prosperity comes from Mother Earth, who is the wife of God. Therefore we call Father God, Mother Earth. If we don't cherish our prosperity, it's like cutting off the head of the goose who laid the golden egg, or cutting off a tree branch that's giving us fruit. The first type of prosperity we need to cherish is our own body and mind. Whatever wealth we enjoy is coming from our own body and mind. If I'm working such long hours, or I'm working in dangerous conditions, or I'm working in some kind of toxic environment that's harming me mentally and physically, that I'm damaging my own source of prosperity. And then taking care of others. We don't want to damage others physically. And we don't want to damage others mentally and emotionally. We want to take care of the people that we work with, the people we serve, physically and mentally and emotionally, as they're also our sources of prosperity. And we want to make sure that we're taking care of the environment, the land, the sky, the water. And then cherishing our particular prosperity type. And again, in the book, we go into much more detail with this. Whatever I'm enjoying, I need to cherish it. I need to protect it. The way we devotees would put this would be that I'm enjoying it as prasadam instead of as bhoga. I'm seeing that it belongs to Krishna, that he's giving me this to nourish me, and therefore I take care of it. I serve it. So we have a few basic examples here. Let's say I'm enjoying Aishwarya. I'm enjoying positional leadership. But I also want to help other people to feel smart and competent. Right? Not that it's all about me. If I'm enjoying Gyan, I want to remember that there's also emotional intelligence. I want to remember that I can also be wrong. If I'm enjoying Virya, to make sure that I get my health in a healthy way, in a natural way. Then to use that health and that strength to protect others. If I'm enjoying Shri, to make sure that I don't use beauty to bewilder and manipulate others. If I'm enjoying Yasha, to make sure that I don't ask people to respect me if I show some lack of integrity just because I'm famous. If I'm enjoying Vairagya, to make sure I don't get so detached that I stop caring about people. Right? That I remember that in my detachment, I also need to be willing to sacrifice for the good of others. Then there's cherishing the integrity of our field. Those in the field of artistry cherish the integrity of their field by being willing to sacrifice to keep the quality of their goods or services, even when they're pushed to make more money or to work faster. Like, no, I saw a sign out once, we make our sandwiches slowly. If you want fast food, go down the street. So that's kind of epitomizes cherishing the integrity of the field of artistry. In the field of government, to remember that the main purpose is to serve others, to have equal justice for everyone, not to have special interests, to make sure we're not personally profiting off the field of government, to collect wealth honestly. In resources is to make sure that I'm taking care, Prabhupada talks about this all the time, of the land and the animals, which are my main source of how I'm producing wealth. Treat the plants, the animals, and the land with love and kindness. Treat employees fairly. Have honest financial dealings. That's what Prabhupada talks about in the 16th chapter of the Gita. In ideas, we cherish the field by making sure that truth is applied to benefit others, and that we don't put ourselves in a financial position where we're going to tend to lose our objectivity. And we respect others' expertise. Principle 6 is to have celebrations of the sacred in our life and work. So this is the principle of yajna. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita 3:16, Evam pavarijam chakram. Srila Prabhupada, speaking about this, says that in nature, the plants and animals, they naturally give back. They take from nature and they give back. Because chakra means a wheel, and a wheel means moving. But we humans have to intentionally give back. Prabhupada would say it's like paying our electric bill to the sun. I can't just take from Krishna. I need to give to Krishna. That's one lecture where Prabhupada was really talking about this. He said, you're taking, you're taking, you're taking. But if there's love, you also have to be giving. So this means that we take time off from our work and our life, and we do some sort of celebratory ceremony of connection with the divine. Ideally, at least every day. For some people, maybe it's going to be once a week. But sometime when we're giving back, according to whatever religion one has, whatever tradition one has, to spend some time giving back to the Lord. Now, ultimately what should happen is that every moment of our work and every moment of our life becomes this ceremony of connection. We have a wonderful guest essay called Every Act is Ceremony. You know, that we're doing everything. Of course, Krishna talks about this in Gita 4:24. That everything we're doing, we're feeling this connection with the divine. And then our last personal principle is to work above the shades of ego. So Rukmini and I call them shades because tamas is like a dark covering over a window that you can't see through. Rajas is like a sheer curtain over a window. You can kind of see some light and some shapes. Sattva is like a clear window, and to be above the shades is to be outside. All right, so we're going to meet these guys. Ready to meet them? Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas? All right. First, we're going to meet Tamas. Hey, I'm Thomas. I'll do the right thing if it's easy, you know? Like, hey, if I can get a vegan burger at a McDonald's for the same price, yeah, but don't expect me to go to another restaurant and pay more money. You know, look, whatever's on the television, I'm going to watch the next thing. If the remote's all the way over there, I'm just going to watch whatever's the next thing. Yeah. I'm not an ambitious person, and I'm not some spiritual person. It's kind of simple. And I take good care of my family, and you better not insult them, because I get insulted easily, and I'll insult you back. And then there's Rajas. I am a very good person. I'm very honest, I work hard. I'm not lazy, and I'm not some person. But I go regularly to church, I pay my taxes, I have built the schools and the hospitals and the roads of society. Look at all my possessions. Do you see all of them? I earned all of them by my hard work. And I will tell you how many hours I sacrificed and how much trouble I went to and how much money I spent in order to get all of that stuff. And all of those awards, I mean, probably, they're going to put my name in the history book and then have a statue in the park. And I'm sattva. I'm very spiritual. I'm not lazy, and I'm not ambitious. I'm just peaceful. I'm very kind and forgiving and equipoised because it makes me feel so good inside. On my shelf I have crystals and angels. And I see everyone equally, not like those materialistic people. And then we have above the shades. I'm on an adventure. I'm a soul on a spiritual adventure with the divine. I don't know where it's going, but we're having a lot of fun. And I'm living life with constant state of curiosity and wonder. So these shades are like the dark side of our work. So we may be tempted in our work, and certain kinds of work has particular temptations of the shades to pull energy from these shades, but when we do, we become contaminated, and then we can't act as an agent of love. Let's look at the shades of ego and charity. So in Thomas, you give the wrong thing to the wrong person. You give alcohol to the alcoholic, or you give the right thing to the right person, but without respect. Here, take your charity. Or you have the right thing to the right person with respect, but wrong time. You give them charity when they're on the toilet or they're sleeping, And in Rajas, you give the right thing to the right person with respect at the right time. You're calculating. Well, I'm giving this because my boss told me to, or my guru told me to, and then maybe I'll get this facility. I don't really want to give it, but I'll get something back. Or I wish I hadn't given it. I could have spent that on something else. And in sattva, you go to the right place and the right thing to the right person with respect at the right time because it makes you feel so good inside. And above the shades, you give the right thing to the right person with respect at the right time in order to please Krishna. And when we're at work, if we're in Thomas, we're disengaged, we're stubborn, we're insulting, we're lazy, we're morose, we're procrastinating. If we're in Rajas, we're greedy, we're envious, we're aggressive. Things go right, we're like, yay! Things go poorly, we're like, ah. And in Sattva, we're equipoised, steady determination. And above the shades, this is from Bhagavad Gita 3:30, 3 things we don't do and 3 things we do. What we don't do. We don't try to exploit our prosperity types. In other words, we cherish them. Next thing, we don't feel that we're the owner. We're not the owner of our body, we're not the owner of our mind, we're not the owner of our work, we're not the owner of our wealth, not the owner of our employees. And then we're not lazy. 3 things that we do. We dedicate every moment to Krishna, every moment to our ultimate source. We always remember, I'm a soul. I'm not the body, I'm not the mind, I'm not this nature, I'm not this work, I have nothing to do with this world. And thirdly, that we do work according to our nature. So we've looked at the 7 individual principles. Now we're going to look at 2 systems principles. So this is covered in part 3 of our book. And principle 8 is maintaining societal balance, having cooperation between the fields and competition within the fields. So the fields are meant to cooperate with each other, not compete with each other. Ideas, trains, and guides. Government approves licensing, accreditation, provides venues to help launch or repair or maintain cooperative endeavors. And resources organizes, you okay with this? Yeah. Resources organizes, directs, and distributes